the owners had been unable to stuff inside. This wasn't uncommon in Eastfield Terrace. The net curtains were permanently drawn across the front windows, and as far as anyone could tell, the lights were never turned on. But even this wasn't particularly strange. What was unusual was the way the house smelled. For weeks now, there had been a rotten sewage smell that seemed at first to be coming from a blocked pipe, but which had rapidly gotten worse until people had begun to cross the street to avoid it. Whatever was causing it seemed to be affecting the entire place. The grass on the front lawn was beginning to die. The flowers had wilted and then been choked up by weeds. The colour seemed to be draining out of the very bricks. The neighbours had tried to complain. They had knocked on the front door, but nobody had come. They had telephoned, but nobody had answered. Finally, the Borough Council at the Ipswich Civic Centre had been called, but of course it would be weeks before any action was taken. The house wasn't empty. That much they knew. They had occasionally seen the owner, Gwenda Davis, pacing back and forth inside. Once, more than a week ago, she had been seen scurrying home from the shops. And every evening the television was turned on. Gwenda Davis was well known in the street. She had lived there for much of her adult life, first on her own, and then with her boyfriend, Brian Conran, who had worked occasionally as a milkman. But what had really set the neighbours talking was the time 6 years ago when she had inexplicably adopted an 8-year-old boy and brought him home to live with her. Everyone agreed that she and Brian were not exactly ideal parents. He drank, the two of them argued, and according to local gossip, they hardly knew the boy whose own parents had died in a car accident. Nobody was very surprised when the whole thing went wrong. It wasn't really the boy's fault. Matthew Freeman had been nice enough when he arrived, but a bit of time spent with Gwenda and Brian had soon had an effect. He had started missing school. He'd been hanging out with the wrong crowd, known for a whole range of petty crimes. Inevitably, he had gotten into trouble with the police. During a robbery at a local warehouse just around the corner from Ipswich Station, a security guard had nearly died, and Matthew had been dragged out with blood on his hands. As punishment, he'd been sent away on some sort of fostering programme. He had a new foster mother somewhere in Yorkshire, and good riddance to bad rubbish. That was the general view. All this had happened 3 months ago. Since then, Gwenda had gradually disappeared from sight, and as for Brian, no one had seen him for weeks. The house was silent and neglected. Everyone agreed that soon something would have to be done. And now it was 7:30 in the first week of June. The days were stretching out, holding on for as long as they could. The people in Eastfield Terrace were hot and tired. Tempers were getting short, and the smell was as bad as ever. Gwenda was in the kitchen, making supper for herself. She had never been a very attractive woman, small and dowdy with dull eyes and pinched lips that never smiled. But in the weeks since Matt's departure, she had rapidly declined. Her hair was unbrushed and wild. She was wearing a shapeless flowery dress and a cardigan which, like her, hadn't been washed for some time. She had developed a nervous twitch and was constantly rubbing her arms as if she were cold or perhaps afraid of something. "Do you want anything?" she called out in a thin, high-pitched voice. Brian was waiting for her in the sitting room, but she knew he wouldn't eat anything. She had preferred it when he'd had his job down at the milk depot, but he'd been sacked after he'd gotten into a fight with one of the managers. That had happened just after Matt had been sent away. Now he had lost his appetite, too. Gwenda looked at her watch. It was almost time for Big Wheel, her favourite television programme of the week. In fact, thanks to cable, she could see Big Wheel every night. But Thursdays were special. On Thursday, there was a brand new programme, not a repeat. Gwenda was addicted to Big Wheel. She loved the bright lights of the studio, the mystery prizes.